Well, the world continues to appear to be on fire. So many different problems going on. To help me understand that, I have brought on special guest J. Michael Waller. Michael, thank you so much for being with me today.
It's nice to be back.
All right, so let me give some background just so people know who you are, and then I want to jump into some really big stories that are in the news this morning. You are the senior analyst for strategy at the Center for Security Policy. You're a former CIA asset. You've been published in the New York Post, Washington Examiner, the Federalist, and the Wall Street Journal. You are also an author. Help me understand this. I see all of these articles coming out about the head of the CIA, William Burns or Bill Burns, and he is traveling all over the world enacting American diplomacy. My understanding is this is what the Secretary of State is supposed to be doing. Am I to take that Anthony Blinken is too busy putting out too many fires? Or am I to understand that the CIA is now the lead diplomat for the United States of America?
It looks like it's the second one because the State Department has a huge bureaucracy to support the Secretary of State handling all kinds of fires at once. But we have the CIA director going around essentially as America's top diplomat to places like Russia, the Middle East, and elsewhere. And it looks like you know the spooks have taken over our diplomacy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I gathered is like, wait a minute, I thought that Anthony Blinken was supposed to handle this, and then I see another article. Bill Burns is over here, Bill Burns is over there, and people are suspicious of the CIA, and so then you start starting to feel like, okay, wait a minute, is the CIA colluding with these governments, or are they actually trying to get these wars to go away? I think it leaves a strange taste in the American mouth.
As it should. I mean, you have a Secretary of State whose job it is to be the nation's top diplomat. The Senate didn't confirm Burns to be an ambassador or a diplomat. It confirmed him to be the president's chief intelligence advisor and the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, which is certainly not a diplomatic entity.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you saw this, but Democrat Representative Maxine Waters of California is telling people on MSNBC that Donald Trump voters are secretly training for a military takeover in the mountains if Biden loses to him in the election. And she's demanding to know, how is Biden going to protect the country and Democrat voters? First off, is there any truth to this madness? And second, why would Trump supporters attack if Donald Trump wins the election?
This, those narratives coming out are insane. And Maxine Waters is a weird character, even on a good day. So I haven't heard this argument. So if Trump wins, the MAGA people are going to go to the mountains rather than run the government. I don't know the logic there. But you have these narratives now that have been played out at Georgetown University Law School with their Transition Integrity Project. I mean, these are not whack jobs like Maxine Waters. These are serious people, like top former Justice Department lawyers, top former Pentagon lawyers, senior government officials of all stripes, mainly Democrat, but some Republicans, or they had been Republicans, like Bill Kristol, and they're getting together to now not presume that Trump is going to lose the election and try to seize power. Now they're operating with the idea that Trump is definitely going to win the election, and how are they going to prevent him from taking on his constitutional role as elected president?
So, are you saying that they are like game planning another Russia collusion story or something to discredit him, block him from the White House?
Something to that effect. And the line now is that he's going to be a dictator because he said he's going to be a dictator, and it's all about revenge and retribution, and it's not about making the country great again. So yeah, they're desperate to prevent their fantasy from happening, and they're actually wargaming it out with say, Bill Kristol role playing Donald Trump, and with the top professors at Georgetown University Law Center, the top law school in Washington, D.C. They're plugged right into the Justice Department. They're plugged right into even to the permanent staff of the Supreme Court, all across government in this big revolving door between academia and the big K Street law firms and then the government bureaucracy. And they're literally planning on preventing Trump from being able to govern. They've already got over 100 lawsuits already written up. They don't even plaintiffs' names on them yet, or defendants' names on them yet, because the defendants haven't been elected and appointed.
So the the lawfare when he gets in is going to be worse than the lawfare he's already trying to survive right now.
Yeah, yeah. I think they're really think about it. Think if you were under all the stress that he's under now, any of us, especially if you're in your 70s, this can kill a person. I wouldn't be surprised if you've got death by lawfare doesn't seem that out of control in terms of a concept, but these people will stop at nothing to prevent him from governing again because he threatens their rice bowls.
Yeah, there's that saying, "Death by 1,000 cuts," but this is death by 100 lawsuits. Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't realize that they were putting so much effort into day one being ready to block him at every. I mean, his first 100 days will be filled with 100 lawsuits. It sounds like.
Anyway, yeah, and these are designed to cripple the entire federal government, to prevent him from implementing his executive orders, to prevent his people from being confirmed, to make sure that he simply can't govern and just to leave the country being run by the permanent apparatus. And it's not just me saying it. NBC reported it. So the insiders were leaking this to NBC. And then they invited a reporter from The Atlantic, which is sort of the left's flagship publication. And he attended and he wrote a piece on it in February saying, this is really disturbing. Even The
So
Atlantic was upset.
yeah, so let me just tease this out with you. So let's say, for example, Donald Trump's at a rally. He says, "In my first day in office, I'm going to shut down the border. We're going to start the largest deportation of illegals the world's ever seen. And we're going to drill, baby, drill." I read about this in articles online, right? So
Yeah.
are these some of the areas that they are immediately preparing to attack?
Yes. And so many more. So many more on the whole weaponization of government. When he wants to de-weaponize government, they're going to block it to prevent him from even being able to function. They want to keep the control system that they have in place, and they want to remain in control of it even when he's president. So they're going after people who need security clearances. Obviously, when you need a security clearances for many government positions. How do you slow walk that through the system? Well, we do know that the FBI and other agencies do slow walk this through when Trump's appointees, are in need of clearances. And some people have come forward to talk about it yet. But the litigation is such, it's a twofold litigation plan. The first is to prevent officials from acting in their official government capacities. The second is to go after them as people. So their life savings are depleted because they have to defend themselves as citizens while they're getting a government salary. And it makes it so that their entire lives are just thrown upside down so they can't function.
Is this all just because it's Donald Trump, or is this because he threatened to lay off a bunch of the permanent government workers through the Schedule F that he's talked about?
It's both, and it's also against the movement that Trump represents. These are Americans who are fed up with a huge, predatory, out of control central government. And the people leading the fight against that movement are those who have profited from all of that all of their lives. So if you go to any of the neighborhoods around Washington, D.C., where these people live, they're all $1 million, multi-million dollar homes. They've got really nice cars. They've got very expensive lifestyles working for Uncle Sam. Think of how they do that. Trump wants to take that away from them, and they're not going to give it up.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I don't know if you saw this, but actor Robert De Niro, who I used to really like and respect, said in an interview that he now knows what it's like to live through the Holocaust and under Adolf Hitler because he lived through the Trump presidency. I mean, give me a
Oh,
break. How insulting and stupid do you have to be to say that? That's like one of the dumbest things I've ever heard a human being ever say.
It's, yeah, yeah. How do you comment on this? But this is the type of stuff that gets people jazzed up and energized and gets other people believing these dumb narratives. Oh, you've got somebody from Hollywood who said some, you know, psychedelic type of weird statement. It just makes no sense, but people follow it. And like these people on the college campuses, most of them don't even know what they're protesting, but
Yeah,
they're passionate about it anyway.
yeah, I've seen that on Twitter where they ask them, what are you protesting? I don't know, something about the Jews, something about Gaza. They couldn't pick Gaza out on a map. Is this an indication to us that the ideology of Marxism has actually taken root in the universities?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. They and it's not the old Marxism of the poor fighting against the wealthy few. It's now the oppressed fighting the oppressors, and in every single case, America is the oppressor. So all people of color are oppressed, all of them. All women are oppressed everywhere. Uh, any country allied with the United States is obviously an oppressor country, and the United States is so oppressive that it was founded by oppressive white Christian men, and the whole purpose of it was to oppress everybody else. They actually believe all of this, so they go through their universities. Their professors affirm it. They don't just affirm it; they'll pound it into you if you didn't come in believing it anyway. And so many of the students graduate this way. And where do so many of them go? They go into government jobs.
What's like fascinating to me is most of the people that are fighting or protesting are women of color at the most prestigious universities in America. How could you be oppressed and suppressed and make your way into the most prestigious universities or perceived, uh, superiority of these universities? It doesn't make any sense. If you try to apply common sense to it, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. No, it makes no sense at all. And it's not supposed to make sense. This is all about anger and oppression and affirmation of one being oppressed. It's like in Monty Python, help, help, I'm being repressed type of nonsense. And they thrive on this. And this is their cause, to fight oppression wherever they see it. Now, you know, this really says something about the prestige of these universities. If they're bringing in crazies like this, and they have academics and faculty, you know, pushing this into their heads and reaffirming it, and even coming out and breaking the law with these students. How prestigious are these universities, and why would any normal person want to go there, and why would any normal company or respectable entity anywhere want to hire someone with that diploma?
Yeah. What shocked me was over the weekend reading that 55% of the student body attending these higher levels of education are actually foreigners. So you have a native population of people born in America. They've been able to get into these prestigious universities, these elite institutions, and then 55% of them come in from other countries, but they're all educated on the evilness of America, the evilness of capitalism, the evilness of free thinking, and yet those are the very things that have made America great.
Yeah,
Um, and
and they're paying
brought and
cash for it
invited them
too.
in.
Yeah, unlike most American students, most of the foreign students are paying cash, so they're getting defrauded.
Wow. Wow.
There are huge lawsuits out there.
Yeah.
These universities should really be taken down a lot for tolerating all this, for creating these climates that literally cheat students and families out of an education, out of the what they paid to attend, and out of the value of the prestige of the diploma. They're being just ripped off.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Having been a graduate student, a graduate professor too, but I mean, I've seen it myself. I chose not to go to one of the prestige universities for my doctorate. I went to Boston University instead, and then I taught for 12 years at a school by small school started by former Georgetown University professors. So the Georgetown national security degree just wasn't worth it anymore. So these professors went out and they started a new school.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Interesting. I don't know if you saw this or not, but the same people running these multi-university campus protests are now calling for a day of rage in downtown New York City. What happens when hundreds of thousands of angry people come together in a very small, confined area? I'm worried that this thing's going to spin out of control.
Well, say what you will about New Yorkers, but the New York police are really patriotic guys and they don't take much nonsense. So if they want to have the day of rage, let them have the day of rage. Let's see what the NYPD has to say about it.
Yeah, well, hopefully they're empowered to actually keep the law, enforce the law, and do something, because a lot of these university students, they've done vandalism, bodily harm, and then boom, they're back on the street before the sun's even gone down. And so it just encourages people, hey, I can get away with violence and vandalism, and nobody seems to care.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've been in a mob action before, but there's this psychology behind it, and it's a planned psychology behind it, where it's really exciting and it can be fun to be in the middle of a raging mob, even if you don't intend to do anything. You just intend to be there as an observer or sort of a participant, but not to do anything wrong. It's really easy to get caught up in it once the mob mentality takes place. It's easy for an average mild mannered person to commit acts of vandalism or worse, be part of an assault uh, that they ordinarily wouldn't do. So I hope a lot of people learn a lot of lessons with their silly little day of rage. Like, they can't even be original about it. You know, they're taking a name from the Weather Underground and the SDS from the 1960s at the Chicago conventions. You know, days of rage, and it was, as then it was in solidarity with the enemy in Vietnam, with the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. It wasn't simply anti-war sentiments, even though that helped legitimately, I mean, raise a lot of anger. It was organized by people who supported our enemy, and these were people who, many of them came from old Communist Party families, red diaper babies. So look at what you have now in 2024. Days of rage with well-off younger people who are siding again with America's enemy, Hamas, which is a designated international terrorist group, and with every communist movement and government around the world you can think of, in their having their little day of rage again. So it's not like they're upset with a certain thing that's happening in the world. They support our mortal enemies.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, staying on that topic, I was thinking about this today, so I need your brain to help me understand this, because I feel like the American people got hoodwinked, and I feel like a lot of members of Congress got hoodwinked, right? So the whole focus is on, we've got to protect the United States border, but they say, okay, we need this foreign aid money. We'll combine them all together, right? No, no, no. We now need to strip America and America's interests out, right? So
Yeah.
they say, okay, wait a minute. We need $61 billion for Ukraine. We don't have a lot of support because of how the war's been going. So I know what we'll do. We'll link it to emotional sentiment for Israel. So they get them to pass this foreign aid bill, and about 9 billion goes to Taiwan, about 19 billion to Ukraine, and about to Israel, and about 61 billion to Ukraine. And then today, the Biden administration says we're pausing aid to Israel after getting $19 billion. We're going to pause ammunition shipments and aid to them. And then you find out that they're giving money to Hamas and sending in those supplies. What are the American people supposed to think?
It's so complicated to follow. And I can see why the average person would think it's really confusing, but you just encapsulated it beautifully. You just think last November, so just a few weeks after Hamas began its slaughter against the Israelis, the House passed a clean bill of aid to Israel. We're going to fund aid to Israel, and we're going to use it not with extra taxpayer money, but with the money that was expanded, that was put forward to expand the IRS by 87,000 agents. So it's win-win for the American public, and it helps our foreign policy, and it helps Israel right after. Senator Chuck Schumer, who boasts of being the highest ranking Jew ever elected to public office in America, sat on that. He didn't want a clean bill of aid to Israel to go through because, as you just said, it had to be hooked to Ukraine, which is where his family is originally from. So it had to be that way in order to force. If you were against aid to Ukraine, then Israel would get no help. So they had to force that issue. The House ended up caving in on that. And then once the House caved in, Biden stopped the ammunition supply to Israel, right on the cusp of Israel going in to destroy Hamas.
Okay, so Chuck Schumer has connections to Ukraine, family connections to Ukraine.
Yeah, he's spoken about it publicly.
Yeah. Okay, I did not know that.
His grandparents were Ukrainian Jews.
Okay, I knew he was Jewish. I didn't realize that because I know that he was one of the first to call for Netanyahu to step down.
Yeah.
But that we must support them. But then it seems like behind the scenes, he's done everything he can to not support Israel, and has kept all of his focus off of the American border and over on the country of Ukraine.
Right.
Now it makes sense. Okay.
And this is the thing, he hates Netanyahu. Fine, it's another country. Let them have their own leaders. You support the country, not the leader. But it's liberal American Jews like Schumer who are playing Israeli politics. They want to overthrow Netanyahu. They want a color revolution in Israel. That's none of our business. Let the Israelis deal with that. So he was holding up aid to Israel for the purpose of really, in a way, working in tandem with Hamas to squeeze the Israeli leadership to get Netanyahu out, because Netanyahu's a conservative. Schumer only wants the socialists to run Israel.
Okay.
So they're playing Israeli politics against American politics for just so they can have, liberal Soros-oriented color revolutions in their different countries. So I mean, Soros, Schumer has been quite open about the fact that he wants to oust Netanyahu, like Pelosi has, and the Biden administration has sought to. That's why they've been squeezing Israel since November and not wanting Israel to smash Hamas.
Yeah, never waste a good crisis, right? Like,
Well,
there are people.
Milk this crisis. Yeah, you're right. But it's really, really sick, because rather than tell Israel, we're going to support you to destroy this common enemy, you're going to do it on your own. We'll help you with supplies and logistics and intelligence, but it's your fight and we're going to back you on it. That's fine. They never did that. They wanted to draw this conflict out so they could play politics in Israel and get rid of Netanyahu.
I wonder how all these protesters would feel knowing that Chuck Schumer manipulated the American people, and it is, I guess, comfortable with Jews and Palestinians dying so that he can get money to Ukraine.
Yeah. Now you see how convoluted it is and why so many Americans just don't understand it. It's perfectly understandable why they don't understand it. And it gets even worse. This is just the top.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay,
Tell me. Think of all the interest they have with getting money themselves from Qatar, that jihadist one-man regime in the Gulf, big oil and especially gas producer. It's a huge contributor to American universities. It's a huge owner of American businesses, or co-owner or investor in American businesses. That one-man regime, which supports Hamas, supported Al-Qaeda, it supported our enemies everywhere, yet we're tight with it because they were nice enough to let us use their territory for a military base, really to keep it so that they could make sure that we would never attack them, which ended up being the case. But in the meantime, they are sponsoring our enemies, including Hamas. So they're funding, directly or indirectly, a lot of the anger and radicalism at American universities.
Yeah, I saw that they're the #1 contributor to universities in the United States. So it's like, hey, we're going to allow them to sponsor terrorism because they also sponsor education in America. Like what?
Yeah, at Jesuit universities in some cases.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like we live in the twilight zone, I swear. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, this has actually connected a lot of dots for me that I have been missing. I've been reading and trying to understand this, and you connected the dots brilliantly. Mike, tell me about your book out. What are we going to learn by reading it? Why did you write the book?
The book is big intel. And I wrote it really, I didn't intend to write it at first. And then the publisher came to me. I knew the editor for a long time, and he said, "You've got to write a book about the CIA and how it's gone woke." And then back and forth and back and forth. So how about really the FBI and the CIA, because it comes in a package, and the FBI is a bigger threat to the public. So that's how the book began. But the book was only supposed to be about what happened to the FBI and the CIA under Obama, Trump, and Biden, and how it became woke, how the whole intelligence community became woke. And in digging, you're looking at what are the sources of this? Why did people in the Obama administration and President Obama do these things? Was it ignorance? Was it foolishness? Was it unrelated, to fallout from something, some other policy? And I discovered that it was very purposeful. And then you look into, well, why was the purpose? What are the ideological drivers behind the decisions of Obama and his Attorney General Eric Holder and his CIA director um, John Brennan and so many others? And you find there's a long and really very very old history behind these ideological drivers that go back more than a century to 1922, to a meeting in Moscow where the founder of the KGB was at the meeting with the leaders of the world's communist parties on how to bring about revolution in the West, because it wasn't going to be a violent revolution like the Bolshevik Revolution. This was just 5 years after the Bolshevik Revolution. They had to come up with a more subversive way to do it. And that way became what became known as critical theory, to criticize relentlessly everything about our societies, from its history, from its heritage to the Judeo-Christian heritage, even the Greco-Roman heritage that brings us democracy and the idea of republican form of government, everything down to the nuclear family, and to destroy it all through relentless criticism. And that way create a society that no longer believes in itself and can be easily taken over once it's been polarized. So that's what we see happening, but it was started over a century ago. The job then, so looking at that history, I thought, well, where did J. Edgar Hoover fit in? How did the CIA fit in? CIA was set up to defend against this stuff abroad, and the FBI, part of its reason for being built the way it was built was to defend our country against this. What happened? Then I discovered that J. Edgar Hoover, since 1920, had been warning about the infiltration of our country by these types of elements. So through his entire career, before he became FBI director, all the way to his death, he was warning us about this. And looking back at his writings and his testimony and everything else, he was always right about these things. Then I learned that the CIA, from its start right after World War II, had been compromised by Soviet penetrations, by agents of the Soviet Union, and by communist sympathizers who wanted to see a Soviet America. Came in and they penetrated U.S. intelligence during World War II. Many of them were weeded out after the war. They went into the State Department and other government agencies, but some went right into the CIA, including one individual, Herbert Marcuse, who was one of these communist individuals who developed the whole idea of critical theory at Columbia University. The CIA still considers him one of its own. Wow, I mean, this is really deep stuff to see. It's not just a few political hacks at the top or a few radicals in the bureaucracy, but they've been working us for 100 years.
Yeah, I didn't realize that critical theory was about relentless criticism. I thought critical was as in important. Oh, it's critical. So you're saying that the relentless criticism of the things that have foundationally made for a good society is how you crumble and destroy and erode a society?
Right. It comes from Karl Marx saying that to criticize everything in existence, not for the purpose of making it better, but for the purpose of destroying it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, okay, so we're just being boiled slowly like a frog. We don't even realize that we've been infiltrated and taken over because they haven't fired a bullet. Like you say, it wasn't a bloody Bolshevik revolution. This has been a methodical, slow boil to take over America.
Yeah. And you know, had I set out to write a book like that, or had the publisher said, "Hey, write about this, about how the Marxists infiltrated our whole intelligence community," I would have said, "You guys are crazy. I'm not going to write a book like that. This is just crazy talk." But then you go to the original documentation, to the original quotes and statements, to the original executive orders and academic papers by the people who made it happen, and you find this is very purposeful. It's very strategic. And it took place as a revolution from inside the intelligence community, the entry level people going into the FBI and the CIA. Especially it started happening after 9/11, when there was a mass hiring and there was no real regard for character, or for, and you had a students coming in who didn't, by that point after 2001, have the education and American founding principles anymore, which was something that Democrats and Republicans alike could agree on. You had instead people who embraced critical theory that America is the oppressor and you have to stand with the victims and that everybody's a victim. Then they had victim cell groups throughout the intelligence community. So I'm a victim of color. I'm a victim of you know, binary prejudices. I'm a victim. You name it. All these victims groups. So that by the time somebody like Obama came in, because after 9/11, George W. Bush had intended to, he centralized our whole intelligence community at the top the way it had never been done, because people knew, Democrat and Republican, that would be a threat to our constitutional government. But Bush, in the name of fighting terrorism, said, nope, we have to centralize it from the top to streamline everything so we'll never get attacked again. Well, then comes in somebody like Obama, and his entourage, or what would become his entourage, was watching this take place before Obama was even elected. Their time comes to take over from the top, and now they have the power to politicize the whole intelligence apparatus with people from the top, now using diversity, equity, and inclusion as the excuse to promote otherwise unemployable, often incompetent, certainly malicious and unprofessional, uh, politicized people with grievances, to take over the whole nerve centers of the FBI and CIA and become essentially political commissars for both agencies, like we see in the military, like we see in the universities.
Wow. Man, I can't wait for people to get that book. That is
Well,
you've pulled a lot of threads, you know, for us to a lot of rabbit holes rather, for us to go down and better understand what the heck is going on. Because I think a lot of people, they have a sense that something's not right, but they can't quite put their finger on it because we're just lacking information.
right. Right. So this tells only part of the story. There's a former CIA analyst named John Gentry who has a book that came out last year called Neutering the CIA. His book is a very analytical product, like you'd expect from a CIA analyst, very professionally done, heavily footnoted, much more than Big Intel. And he describes, without being partisan or anything, he describes how the critical theory penetrated the CIA and the intelligence community. So this anti-Trump rage that you see, and he argues, is more of a critical theory rage, and they're raging at Trump as the one who's blocking them. So if you want a good deep look at that from a CIA man's point of view, he's a good guy. I know him, and he's written this, and he's written in the professional intelligence journals, and it's actually worse than I wrote in Big Intel.
Wow. Okay. Well, that that is also going to be on my summer reading list. uh, thank you so much for coming on, helping us understand. You've connected a lot of dots for me personally, hopefully for the audience as well. I'm going to put a direct link to Big Intel down below so people can get right to it. But if people want to follow you online, what's the best way to do that?
They can follow me on Twitter or X at @jmichaelwaller, and my organization at Secure Freedom, or go to securefreedom.org, which is the Center for Security Policy site.
Okay. I will definitely put that all in the show notes down below. Thank you so much for coming on, for everything you do, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. It's been great to be back with you.